And with that, it's time to get the presentation started, and I will hand it over to Taylor. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Alyssa. So I hope everyone's doing well. I'm just going to take a few minutes and just give a rundown of AppDynamics and who we are and where we've been and where we're going, and really the what and the why and the how of all this before we jump into the demo with Chai. So won't take too much of your time here, but a little bit about who we are, right? So AppDynamics was the fastest growing software company back in March of 17, right whenever we were supposed to IPO. We were actually set to IPO on the stock market at a valuation of just under $2. And less than 48 hours prior to that IPO, Cisco came in and they snatched us up and they acquired AppD at a valuation of $3.7 billion. So that was and still is a record revenue multiple, the most ever paid for a software company when it comes to revenue multiples. So really exciting. I mean, obviously it says a lot about the growth that we've seen, but more importantly, it really says a lot about APM and really the value that's being placed on that right now across every single industry. Whenever you think about market leadership, I mean, obviously you'll think about Gartner and Forrester, things like the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and we actually are, I think 6 years running now, we've been in the top right corner of the Magic Quadrant. But we've actually had a couple of lead analysts from both of those companies, Gartner and Forrester, come on to work for AppD because they believe so much in what we were doing in our thought leadership, which has been really, really exciting. Whenever you think, from a customer who we're working with, we've worked with a lot of the largest companies in the world. So, just to throw a few out there, I mean, you think about companies like Apple and Amazon and JP Morgan Chase and Capital One, all these companies across all these different verticals are using AppDynamics, and we're so proud to be implemented in some of the largest organizations globally. Not only that, but customer satisfaction, has been, always will be a kind of the pinnacle of what we're doing, and just kind of that solid foundation that we sit on, and customer service could not be more important to us right now. But what do we give, right? So what is this? AppDynamics is available right now on our website. You can actually go on and download an enterprise version of our software for free. For 15 days, we have a free trial. We've actually got a couple of really interesting stories about that. One that just pops into my head right now is Ralph Lauren. They were actually having an application issue. They had an outage over a weekend that they could not solve, so they downloaded our free trial over the weekend, diagnosed the issue, repaired the problem, and called us the following Monday for a meeting. So it's just really incredible how easy this is to implement, and then how rapid you can adopt this into your environment. And speaking of that, AppDynamics is available as SaaS or on-prem or a hybrid of both, so completely flexible on there when it comes to really how you want to deploy this and your customer data and all those things. But lastly, we really do offer a really, really unique ability to unify application data and really the whole IT side of the house to the business side of the house. And Chai will kind of jump into what that looks like and how we can do that. But what do you get, right? And several customers, of course, want a rapid time to value. That's something that we were consistently able to deliver, as well as low cost of ownership. And I'm really talking also from like a hardware utilization standpoint. Right, a common question we get is this going to slow down my application? How heavy, or what's the footprint on my environment? And the answer to that is generally our overhead is between 3 and 5%, and sometimes even lower than that. So really, really, really low overhead. Lastly, right, enterprise adoption, scalability, absolutely our bread and butter. So we are here to grow with you and really build out your IT environment as you continue to grow. We want to grow with you. And I mean, again, going back to when it comes to our customer base, and this slide is really focused on financial services, but really across every vertical, we understand your industry, and we work with so many customers, and there's so many use cases for us that, for example, you look at just the financial sector. Back in March of 2014, JP Morgan Chase was one of our early adopters. and they've been a huge advocate for us, and they're one of our best customers. And since then, I mean, several of their peers have kind of followed suit and started to use AppDynamics to better serve their customers. So, whether you're in retail or more of an e-commerce setting, or maybe it's financial services or insurance or whatever it is, there's always an excellent use case for monitoring application performance and delivering exceptional experiences to your customers. But the question is, what's really driving that, right? And for example, I mean, you think about some of your competitors, and again, this is focused more around financial services, but you're seeing things like Barclays, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citi, whatever industry you're in, you have your core competitors, of course, always, but the truth is that no matter what industry you're in or no matter who you're competing against, you're always competing against these guys, Google, Facebook, Twitter, Uber. These are the applications that me and you and everyone else in the world uses every single day, all day long, and they seem to just always work and be flawless. And whenever your company's application isn't performing to that same expectation, the customer is going to be frustrated, and that's where you're going to see issues that impact your business and where you start to lose customers, which is why you have to keep pace with your customers. And really, this couldn't be personified any better than this quote from RBS, where they were asked, "What's your busiest bank branch?" And they said, "Well, that's easy. It's not a branch. Our busiest branch is our mobile app every single day on the 7:15 train to Paddington." And that just really says a lot about how customers are interacting with your business, no matter what industry, what sector you're in. Everything is becoming digital, and customers are becoming more and more capable of interacting with your business digitally, which is why, again, every business truly is a software business, whether you are or not. And it's fantastic that customers are able to interact with your business that way. I mean, it's great that it's becoming so easy for them to do these things. But the truth is that to get there on your side, it's creating a lot of different dependencies, and it's becoming very, very complex. So, the tap of the finger to transfer money from one account to the other is very easy for a customer from the customer standpoint. But on your end, that single touch of the finger, that's initiating millions and millions of lines of code and traveling through all these different dependencies and microservices and all of this complexity that becomes very, very difficult to navigate it. And of course, that begs the question, how do I follow the customer throughout all of this complexity and really understand what pieces of my application architecture they're touching and really what their journey looks like so that I can ensure it's remaining smooth and flawless for them. And many companies have a setup like this with siloed tools, right? You've got a tool for the network, a tool that monitors the logs, and a tool for the database and whatever, and that's all fine. But the truth is that, in a more, monolithic architecture, that's okay. But whenever there's multiple minor issues that might contribute to poor user experience, you're going to have kind of a skittle effect of traffic lights going across all of your different monitoring tools, and it becomes increasingly difficult to identify what really is the root cause here. And I'm sure you'll resonate with this a little bit. So that scenario is going to lead to everyone being crammed into a war room scenario while your customer's yelling at you on Twitter saying your app is terrible, right? You've got the network guy saying, okay, well, it's not me, the network's okay, so it must be someone else. And so then you go over to the database guy, he says the database tool says we're fine. Then you go through the logs, and it's the whole routine, right? And it creates a lot of friction, not only in IT, but at the same time, you've got the business folks down the hallway in a conference room saying, why can't IT fix this? We're losing all this money, spend is down, conversion rates are dropping, and it's really just a lot of friction across every piece of the business. And that's why you have to solve for today's complex problems and really have a single view, a single pane of glass into these things. And you have to be able to move fast, like I said, know where your customer is going, being able to trace them out that path and get to where they're going before they even do. You have to follow everything and really understand what every piece of your environment looks like and be able to see the dependencies of those things and ultimately focus on what matters most, which is, of course, your customer experience, preserving that, and then also preserving the health of your business. And this is really a great quote, again, by Okta, one of our good customers, and they said, look, without AppDynamics, it's like driving a car 100 miles per hour with your eyes closed. You can't afford not having this visibility, and it's a great quote because no matter what vertical you're in, again, your customers are moving so fast, your business is moving so fast, you have to have visibility into what's happening and truly understand how your customers are interacting with you. Having said that, before we jump into the demo here, just kind of a quick overview of what this is and how it works, right? So the way that we deploy AppDynamics into your environment is we deploy agents, and we map out your entire environment, right? So every dependency, every piece of your architecture is mapped out. You're really given that complete topology of everything across your environment and get that single pane of glass, that end-to-end view across everything. Not only that, but we baseline everything, right? So to understand whenever something's wrong, you have to understand what normal is. And we do that dynamically for you. So as time goes on, we dynamically baseline everything that's happening, right? What is normal? And so, be it transaction time, any metric, it's all going to be baseline. And not only that, but dynamically. And what I mean by that is we're going to understand not only what is normal, but what is normal on any day in any week of any month of any year. So that way, some weeks or some days of the week, you're expecting to see traffic spikes. We're going to know that and understand that over time. That way, whenever you are alerted, it's something meaningful and it's something that actually is an issue. And whenever that happens, we're going to give you a quick screenshot into that issue, and you're going to be able to understand immediately within a few clicks what the offending line of code or what the true cause of the issue is. Most importantly, you're going to be able to do this in real time. Lastly, like I said earlier, enterprise scalability is absolutely our bread and butter. A really good use case for this is Cisco. Actually, before they acquired us, they were a great customer of ours. And as you can imagine, Cisco has a gigantic IT environment. We were able to scale to their environment. So we were able to deploy 15,000 agents across their environment, all reporting back to a single controller. Whenever you think about that, it's really just important to understand, I want to have something long-term, something that I can implement and trust as I grow out my environment and adapt all these new technologies, something that can adapt with that and give me visibility across all of it as we grow. And lastly, just to touch on Business IQ real quick, I mentioned earlier we really unify the business and IT, and one way that we're able to do that is with BIQ. So take, for example, here you're seeing it's showing you Mike Smith, right? He's a platinum customer for United. And he's booking an $1,800 flight to London. So that's all being captured as he travels through the application or the website and books that flight. We're capturing all of that, but what good is it if we can't really give you context on that and bring it back to the business? So with Business IQ, we compile that data into an easy-to-read dashboard that, for example, a business executive could have up and understand that based on application performance, you can see different metrics. So, Mike was a platinum flyer. How many platinum flyers went through a similar application journey like that in the last 30 minutes? 16, right? Or what did the conversion percentage look like? How many of those customers made it from beginning to end on the application, from searching for the ticket to actually checking out? And if they dropped off, what was the cause of that? What was the average load time? Or really where did they see issues to where you can really pick up on some things and understand what your customer journey really looks like from their eyes. But through these 5 core engines, we're really answering these questions, right? We're allowing you to move fast. We're auto-discovering. We're mapping out everything, baselining everything dynamically, no manual configuration. We are following everything by allowing you to see every single business transaction, exactly what the user is doing, and then ultimately focus on what matters most, which is having one single pane of glass, one consistent UI, doing this all in real time, and most importantly, preserving the health of your business. Having said all of that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Chai here, who will really show you what this looks like and how it operates. So yeah, with that, I'll hand it over to Chai for the demo.
Thank you, Taylor. Before we go ahead and get started on the demo, I wanted to spend a quick minute talking about the AppDynamics production architecture. AppDynamics is an agent-based monitoring solution focusing on 4 different classes of monitoring, including end user, application, server, and database. The agents then report their metrics over to a one-way HTTP or HTTPS call to a central application intelligence platform, commonly referred to as the controller. The architecture can be offered in both SaaS and on-prem. Both have the exact same functionality. However, SaaS is preferred due to a total low cost of ownership from an organizational perspective. And finally, our agents have an extremely low resource overhead in production. Moving on to the demo, today we'll be doing a Java demo and an e-commerce vertical. When we first log on to AppDynamics and the individual application, we're first presented with an application flow map. The application flow map is a live and out-of-the-box visualization for your application. Looking at it from the top down, first we're capturing node information. A node is analogous to a JVM in this instance. Additionally, we're capturing tier information. A tier can be a representation of another application or a logical grouping of one or more nodes. Apart from the tiers and nodes being captured, we're also getting the application flow map is also getting peripheral components such as databases, API calls, and message queues. But between all the components and tiers being captured, we're also getting the intercomponent dependencies and the external dependencies. Intercomponent dependencies being node-to-node communication, and external dependencies being connections to an API call that is being made. Because the application flow map is dynamic, operations teams can gain immediate value, and architects can also gain immediate value. Gone are the previous days of assembling Visio diagrams or sending out email updates to the rest of the team about application topology updates. This application flow map just serves as a glue for all the organizations and a single pane of glass to unite everyone on the state of the application itself. From an operations perspective, they can also gain immediate value as deployments are taking place. If the right databases are being added and the right APIs are being instrumented, this can only help to validate deployment efforts and organizational efforts. But apart from holistic monitoring view, some organizations have also suffered from a lack of visibility into their own performance. We've developed Baseline IQ, which is a performance analysis tool. Baseline helps us to analyze the past performance of your application and produce an expected state of performance today. For example, if your application end user response time, was 10 milliseconds average for the last 30 days, today we can expect the end user response time to safely assume be 9, 10, or 11 milliseconds. However, if you see egregious times such as 40 milliseconds to 80 milliseconds, Baseline starts tagging them as egregious and starts to collect the relevant alerts. In this instance right here, we can see that the node has a baseline of 1412 milliseconds and a response time of 1329 milliseconds, which is no cause for error at all. But if the response time started to climb into 3,800 milliseconds or 5,000 milliseconds, 1 to 2 standard deviations for slow and 3 to 4 standard deviations for very slow, then it becomes a cause of error and alerts start to climb and AppDynamics just starts to dynamically kick in and get those dynamic alerts for you. From an organizational perspective, this helps to prevent false alerts and focus on the problems which are important to you and the application as a whole. Now, if you may notice, the application flow map has slightly changed colors. And the reason why it has slightly changed colors is because every metric in AppDynamics is baselined. This can include a simple metric such as load or response time, or a more complex metric such as the heap that is in an application. Because we're baselining everything, we're giving you a holistic picture of your application, and we can implicitly draw insights into what your application's performance might be from all sorts of lenses and perspective. For example, if load was particularly high at a Tuesday at 5 p.m. when it was not supposed to be particularly high, that can serve as a proactive red flag for us to start and investigate different situations. Each leg in this application flow map also represents a different part of a transaction. When assembled together, a transaction is analogous to an HTTP request. Think of transactions as verbs to your applications. Real-life examples of transactions include, in an e-commerce vertical, users logging in, users checking out their cart order, users adding items to a cart order. In AppDynamics, we call our transactions business transactions because they have business context. You're not going to see transactions in some code nomenclature or in some other way. Instead, by default, we're going to categorize them through the first two URI segments, and we can then rename them to relevant information such as fetch catalog or checkout or add to cart. Additionally, this business transactions page can help to unite IT and the business together as a single lens and a single holistic point of view. We can see the real user activity that is occurring on the website, and because we have baseline to help us, we can also proactively determine whether an important business function is starting to have problems. In this case, we see that the checkout function is starting to have degradation, and this is where business transactions and prioritization come into play. Because we know that checkout is a key revenue generating transaction and has to be devoted resources to immediately, we can prevent that from becoming a reactive problem where customers are calling us about issues in the past. Once we log into the checkout transaction and access it, we're presented with an transaction flow map, The transaction flow map shows only components that are relevant to this transaction. For example, it's not going to show you components that are relevant to a login transaction or a logout transaction, but rather only something that pertains to a checkout transaction. The value that you get from the transaction flow map is that it helps you reduce the size and the scope of a problem. During a SEV1 issue or during an immediate issue, we need to get all hands on deck. However, this map can really help us to focus the resources that we need. We can only pick up the DBAs for these responsible databases or the developers only for these responsible JVMs. And at the same time, we're reducing the size and the scope of the problem. Another great visual for the baseline is this graph right here. This represents normal, but however, we have different intermittent spikes in our application. When those degradations start to happen, we start to collect detailed transaction snapshots. A snapshot is also analogous to a real user in a real request. When I first click on a transaction snapshot, I can see an end-to-end view for a particular user. This screen right here represents a real user, a real problem, and this is why immediately you're getting value out of AppDynamics because you're looking at a real situation that can potentially be solved. In this instance, we can see a user that is logging in from Internet Explorer 6, and we can see an immediate pathway all the way down from the tiers to databases here and here. At this point, we can notice just from a flow map perspective that the problem inherently lies in this area right here. 40.7 seconds is being devoted for this JDBC query. Apart from this map, we're also seeing a few relevant metrics on the page, including user experience, categorized as very slow, execution time, and the root potential issue. When we log into the specific transaction itself, we can click drill down. and we're presented with a custom code call graph. Unlike other APM vendors, we're capturing not only basic framework level details, but custom code call graph. This is relevant to your developers because at this point, where other APM vendors and other APM solutions or other reactive IT processes might have taken weeks or months to identify, we have immediately gone forward and we have profiled the code to create a heat map of the immediate cause and root cause of the issue, including method, class, method, and how much percentage of time that has been consumed by the method itself. We can follow the downstream call even further, and we can expose the real issue for what it is. And the real issue is a slow-moving JDBC query. We can click on it and we can see that the JDBC query took a total of 8 seconds. In this case, as a recap and a review, we can give this query to a database to a DBA or our application developer. But really producing the root cause and reducing your mean time to resolution are the key wins of AppDynamics. AppDynamics is a holistic monitoring tool that helps you to unite your business, helping the IT and the business think along the same common lens. But really, when we look at the process, we've identified a real issue, we've gone down through the code, and we've looked at the database. All of this can be done through a few clicks in AppDynamics, and we hope that you and your organization can see immediate value from the product.
Okay, great, Chai, and thank you, Taylor, for the presentation and the demo. So it is now time for the Q&A portion of the event. I do want to also, I know that some people did have some issues during the demo portion, so really deeply apologize for that. We did record it, though, and you will be getting the full recording of the presentation, including the demo, by tomorrow at the latest. So with that, again, like I said, it's time for Q&A. We have received some questions already, and we'll try to answer as much as we can in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. So now let's just get started. The first one is, what code changes are required for the visibility that AppDynamics provides?
Yeah, so I can take that one. I think a lot of these are going to be more in Chai's ballpark, but as far as code changes, Java and .NET applications do not require any code changes for instrumentation. Some other languages like C++, PHP, stuff like that, those do sometimes require minor code changes.
Okay, great, thanks. Next question we've got is, how can AppDynamics help with my microservice application?
Sure. Thanks, Alyssa. I can take this one. This is Chai. First of all, we support a few popular microservices such as Docker or Red Hat OpenShift, but the value that you get in AppDynamics is that we can track microservices deployed in an elastic infrastructure where nodes scale up and down in the application flow map. Additionally, we can do discovery of entry and exit points of your microservice as service endpoints.
Great, thanks. Next question we have, I'm looking at doing a cloud migration. Can AppDynamics help with this?
Sure, I can take that one too. This is Chai. With AppDynamics, if you guys recall the application flow map, it's the flow map that shows a live visualization of your application. You can use it to track the state of your components through time. During a code migration. For example, if you're migrating to an AWS style architecture, you can see an on-prem component and its state of it versus an AWS and how they work together. And lastly, we have analytics and release comparisons feature. So you can prove migration benefits or optimize business performance or assess performance metrics for different releases.
Great, thanks. The next question we have, so what does it mean? What does it mean when you're talking about an agent? Is it virtual? Is it a sniff tool? Is it physical? How does an agent look like?
Right, and think of an agent as a lightweight application or a lightweight almost plugin that gets deployed onto your architecture. So in the case of Java, as we've seen before, the agent hooks onto your JVM, and it can report the metrics for the actual AppDynamics controller that does the heavy lifting and the visualization.
Okay. Another question. So this person has opened the trial version, and could you explain a little bit more about the metric browser?
Sure. The metric browser, easiest way to say it is that it gives you a metrics-oriented view of your monitored environment. So you can see metrics by nodes or different business transactions or the overall application. You can also maybe compare two or more metrics or view a metric relative to a baseline. But an example of a sample metric would be if you have a specific tier or a specific node, you might see a metric that's called exceptions per minute or calls per minute.
Great, thanks. So we definitely got a lot more questions that have come through, and so I'm going to give Chai and Taylor just some time to quickly review, and I will answer some more of the more logistical ones. So someone did ask about a download URL for the video later. How you'll get the recording is you will get an email, like a follow-up email, no later than like tomorrow morning, and that will take you directly to the video, the recording. So that's how you will get that. Also, someone did ask if we'll be able to share the slides. Unfortunately, we won't be able to share the specific slides. Although you, again, will have access to the recording, so sorry for that. Okay, going back to questions. All right. Is AppDynamics able to show delays on database queries or maybe give the root cause of any malfunction?
Right, I can show you that too. So in the case of databases, our DB agent, IAM Core APM really can show delays on database queries. So for example, in the demo, we showed a correlation from a weak application, and the cause of the weak application was a slow DB query. But regarding the root cause of a malfunction, it really depends on what the malfunction is. We can correlate the transactions together. Right? If it's a slow user error or whether it's a slow application method, or even if it's a slow database query, yeah, AppDynamics can give you the root cause of that malfunction.
Great, thanks. Okay, the next question, is there applicability to the IoT ecosystem for devices at the edge?
I'm not too sure what devices at the edge means, but in terms of applicability to the IoT system, we definitely have a IoT monitoring section in our end user monitoring phase. So the same thing here, we deploy agents on we can connect to agents on the client side with the IoT devices, and they can report those metrics back to the central controller.
Great. Okay. I think we may have time for just one or two more questions. I do recognize that there's actually a lot of other questions here, but I think some of them may be best to just answer more on a one-on-one basis. And we'll definitely, for the ones that we aren't able to answer live, you'll get an email from myself or someone from AppDynamics who will be able to give you the right answer. So I think, okay, this is a good question. Gartner says in their 2018 report on the APM suite space, cautions that AppDynamics provides limited support for legacy application environments. As we find that many of our applications still depend upon legacy backends such as mainframe hosted services, can you share with us how you will approach, with all due respect to safe harbors and all, providing us more visibility deeper into our environment?
Right. We do have an IBM mainframe agent that can get you visibility into that ecosystem.
Cool. Let's see. Maybe time for one more. Can you monitor Docker containers?
Yes, we can. That's part of our microservices offering.
Great. Okay. I think for the rest of these are probably best to be answered offline. Although Chai and Taylor, let me know if there's anything else you think is okay to do through the live Q&A session, but I think we should be good. Okay, one more. Can it monitor database jobs as well?
Yeah, we can do that as well. In our DB agent, we can monitor the different sessions that the database is currently using or are on the database. And additionally, we can also monitor blocked sessions. So yes.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. And so with that, that does conclude the Q&A portion of the event. Again, like I mentioned, we understand that there is a lot of other questions that came through that we weren't able to answer live, and we'll definitely have somebody reach out within like a week, definitely. And so with that, again, I want to thank the audience for your great questions and your time, as well as the feedback regarding the demo so that we can address that for our next sessions. And of course, I want to thank Chai and Taylor for your great presentations. So just really quickly before we close, I want to just remind the audience, if you haven't already, there are a few resources that are available through your webinar console. So if you, for example, if you want to see like a more personalized demonstration, you could sign up for a demo and we'll have someone reach out to get that scheduled. And this is more of a good opportunity if you have like more questions that you didn't really want to ask in this larger setting, that would be a good time for that. You can also view a pretty quick guided tour of our platform, and there's also a few other webinars there that you may find helpful, as well as the Gartner MQ that was actually referenced in one of the questions. So with that, on behalf of Taylor, Chai, and myself, thank you for your time today, and have a great rest of your day.